Can you hear us out there in the Zoomverse?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, so reiterating where we're at in the class right now, we've just essentially come to the end of the first unit of the course, which was Introduction to Engineering. And the last assignment in there was due Wednesday, I guess. A personal engineering education plan. Other assignments that we did during this unit were the engineering fields list, the 20 engineering fields, the engineering field presentation outline, rough outline, then your engineering field presentation itself. Within the engineering field presentation itself, if you were going to turn in your presentation, so that's something that you have to do for this assignment. If you go to the questions, the first question is upload your final draft of your presentation. So that should be some kind of presentation file, PowerPoint or whatever. And that needs to be uploaded here to get the full credit for that. Then question 2 is not something you will do. I will fill out that form by hand and give you the points. But questions 3 and 4 are evaluations of your fellow students. So if you did not get a chance to evaluate 2 of your fellow students, then you will have to complete that by watching videos of your fellow students present, because I do have some videos that I'll be uploading here soon. We're still figuring out how to get them from students to me in some cases. So if you did not get your presentation presented in class, you need to turn in a video of that. You can create a video right inside of PowerPoint, and I'll show you how to do that here today in a little bit. But that needs to be done and completed, and then you need to watch 2 of them. Now I have uploaded the 2 presentations that we actually saw in class. Those are uploaded to YouTube, so you can go and watch them if you want to do a evaluation of one of them or both of them. But either way, you need to complete that to get all the points. Remember that presentations in this class are the same as exams. So this counts as essentially the first exam for the class. So just so you're aware of that. In the end, you'll get a score out of 100 points, where 30 points will be, did you upload your presentation? If your presentation is uploaded, you'll get 30 points as long as you did it on time. If you turned it in late, you will lose points for that. But that's 30 points of the exam right there. 50 points of the exam are my evaluation of your presentation. Most people will lose less than 10 points if they do any kind of presentation at all, and they obviously spend some time on it. The only reason I would subtract more than 10 points out of this is for later presentations when you've learned a little bit more about presentations, and if it just is obvious that you didn't do any put any effort into it. But for the most part here, you'll get most of these points for participating. And then the last 2 that are your evaluations of others are worth 10 points each. So if you complete those, you'll get 10 points. You need to give a score for each of the different sections and give some specific feedback for each of the sections to get all 10 of those points. And you need to do it for 2 different students so that you get all 20 of the points total. So for a total of 100 points, essentially participating gives you pretty much all of those points. You can kind of be guaranteed, somewhere in the upper 80s, lower to mid 90s just by participating on that first exam. So that's the big assignment in the first unit, is the engineering field presentation. And then the last one is the personal engineering education plan, where you're going to, in this homework assignment, again, if you need to turn it in late, just send me an email. I can open it up again. But in this one, you have 3 questions, it looks like. Does that look right? Yeah. 3 questions, the list of courses you're taking, you're planning on taking, organized by semester for your 4 years in school, 4 to 5 years for most engineers, but all the classes that you need to take, organized by semester, including classes you've already taken. Then 1 question on what you plan to do during all of the summers of your college education, including jobs, summer courses, internships, travel abroad, work experience, whatever. If you plan on just kind of hanging out and relaxing in the summer, write that down too. Question 3 is research professors, research groups, or companies around the schools you're interested in attending. I want you to find at least 3 of these kinds of people or groups that are doing work that interests you, including their names and contact information and a description of what they do. This is extremely valuable as you are going into engineering, to know who is doing interesting work around you so that you can maybe get to know them, maybe open up an opportunity for yourself. We've already experienced this. We went to a research meeting at the research farm here a couple weeks ago. And after sitting down and talking with some people, one of our students actually was able to land a project to do, and a possible paid internship, essentially, that's being paid for them to work on things. And this is something that we're always looking for, opportunities for students. So this is the last assignment in this unit, and now we're moving on to chapter 1. Any questions about all of this before we move on to the next unit, which we've kind of already done a little bit?
So we will have to watch all the other students' presentations.
Yeah, so pretty much, and I think that everybody's going to have to do that a little bit late here for evaluating people, because we have several presentations that are coming in late, so not everybody's had a chance to do those. Yeah, as soon as I can get those, I'm still working on getting them myself. And as soon as I get them, I can upload them onto YouTube, and I'll tell you when they're available. And that, for that particular, the engineering field presentation, right now it's due tonight at 11 p.m. And we will push that a little bit here so that we can actually, I'm hoping that will be ready today. We'll see if it is actually. We'll push it till next Monday just to be sure. And anybody who needs to work on their personal engineering education plan can still get that done. So, yeah. Okay, last time we did talk a little bit about chapter 1 from the book, just because we were kind of waiting to see if people would show up with presentations ready to go, ready to upload for us. We're going to go back to chapter 1 a little bit and talk about the homework from chapter 1. And then we also, for this, after we're done with chapter 1, which hopefully we should be able to, we should be able to essentially be done with today, I think. We should be able to move on to chapter 2 starting next week. Chapter 2 will probably require most of next week, because as we start up here in chapter 2, we'll also be talking about possible projects, because immediately as soon as we get done with chapter 2, we're going to start going through different things in the chapters of the book, and we'll be doing them in context of an actual project. So everything that we do with the remaining chapters we'll actually be doing in a project sense. What that means is we won't be just working through the book on, problems from the book and ideas from the book. We're going to look at ideas in the book, and then we're going to say, we've got this project that we're doing. Let's apply these ideas to the project. And when you apply the ideas to the project, that will count as essentially your homework for that chapter, is actually using the things that we learned in the book in the actual project. So it'll be very much a hands-on kind of learning process for the next few weeks as we go through this. Chapter 1 is just an overview, and like I said, we'll overview it again one more time today. The main reason we're going to overview it one more time today is because I forgot to record it last time, and we need that recorded for students who are not here in class. So we will do another review of that. But I do want to take a look at the chapter 1 homework really quick so that we understand what's going on there. Three problems, essentially. The first problem is different causes for engineering failures. And this is not something that we necessarily spoke about last time, so we will talk about it a little bit today. But you can, for any of the problems that we do like this, little essay questions, you're welcome to use any resources you want. The textbook is available online. There are a couple of older versions available out there online for free to use. And it's totally fine to use the older versions. It's mostly just a little reference book. It is, let's see, is it listed here? If you open up the syllabus, the textbook is not listed, but I'll tell you what it is. The textbook is Engineering Design Process. I've got right here the 3rd edition, but I've used the 2nd edition and the 1st edition, I think. It's by Youssef Haik. And there's a couple of other authors. This is his name. Youssef, which is Aramaic for Joseph, I believe. Haik. So that's the main author. And you're welcome to, you can buy the book if you want for $50. It's not required for the class. I will be giving you the information you need from it. And if you want to look at it, you can look at it online. There are different versions, like I said, available.
I'm sending you your email, the PDF of the 2nd edition. Just maybe you want to put it there.
Sure, that's fine. You can do that. I don't think I should actually link to it. I'm not sure if it's legal or not. So, but I mean, yeah, it's easy to find. You can just do a Google search for it, and you can find different places where you can use you can view the book. So, I think the 1st chapter of the 3rd edition is available online as well. But we will mostly use resources online as much as the textbook. So nothing in this textbook is proprietary, really. It's just a conglomeration of a bunch of different tools and skills that engineers use, people doing projects use. Question 2 on this 1st chapter homework is explain the engineering design process to a non-engineer and upload a video of your conversation below. It turns out that it's very difficult to upload a video small enough into MyOpenMath so it'll accept it. So I won't be asking you to upload a video here. What you would probably need to do is upload the video to YouTube somewhere and then send me a link of it or some other website like YouTube that can accept a fairly large file. And just take a video with your camera on your phone or whatever. But I want you to explain the engineering design process to somebody that's not an engineer. It can be a roommate, it can be a family member, it can be some person you meet on the street somewhere, I don't really care. But explain it to a non-engineer. Should take you more than 5 minutes, but hopefully less than 10.
So is it just a video?
Just a video. Yep.
And you're just like talking to someone?
Yep.
Okay.
So we've got to record ourselves explaining it to someone, or we explain it to the camera.
I want you to record yourself explaining it to somebody, actually explaining it to a live person. I want you to have the experience of explaining something that's somewhat complex, but not too technical. And I want you to explain it in as much detail as you can and have them, if they have any questions, answer the questions, anything like that. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. And then the last question is to give a definition for professionalism in 20 words or less. Now, the only one of these three that we actually discussed at all last time was the engineering design process, which we will talk about again today a little bit. We'll talk about these other two as well, but these are all things that are somewhat subjective. Even the engineering design process is somewhat subjective. There's no definitive way that engineering design is done, but that's the idea. The idea here is to start to flesh out your own thoughts and your own ideas and your own opinions about these things, because this will determine how you go forward in your engineering degree and your engineering life. This will be something that you will be thinking about a lot during your life, and that you will change your opinion about, that you will modify your ideas about, and that you will teach to others as you move forward. So something that is important. So that's chapter 1 homework, and that right now is due sometime, I don't know when, next week maybe. Yeah, it looks like chapter 1 is going to be due next Tuesday, so you've got time to work on that. Chapter 2 will make due probably next Friday, and then be done with the second unit by the end of the week next Friday. Next week. Before we move on, I want to show you where you can record in in PowerPoint, and then I'll show it in Google as well. So if you're in PowerPoint and you're giving a presentation, to record your presentation for later playing, you go to slideshow, I believe. Go up here to slideshow, and you do, let's see, record slideshow right there. You press record slideshow, and then you go ahead and you do the slideshow, and it should record your voice. I don't know if it records your face on the camera or not. It may or may not do that, but let's actually just try it and see. Okay, PowerPoint, access the microphone, allow, access the camera, then you allow that. Yeah, so it does put your face up on the screen. And the great thing about this recording of this is the only thing it's going to show is this part of the screen here, this slide where the slide is. It is going to show you the next slide, so it gives you a little bit of a preview. And it also will show you the overview of the entire presentation down below. So it's kind of nice the way it works out that way. It's nice for presenting. This is also a good way to practice presenting so that you can give your presentation and then go back and watch it. It'll record it and save it to the computer, I believe, after you've pushed this button. So it gives you a 3, 2, 1, and then you start recording, give your presentation. As you switch the slides, it will switch the slides on the screen as well in the recording and everything else. So anyway, that is that. When you stop when you stop doing that recording, it should save somewhere probably in your video files, somewhere, your video folder somewhere. I don't know exactly where to save it, but that's how you do that there. If you're going to do it in Google Drive, then it's very similar, I believe. Let's get into Google Drive here. Let's see, where are some presentations that I might have here somewhere? I know I have some. Maybe I don't have any here. Let's just open one. Google Drive is where you keep all your Google document kinds of things, right? But it's so as you come here and you're working on your slideshow in Google in the Google Slides thing, then you go to slideshow up here on the right over here, and you can do a recording, I believe. Let's see, is that correct? Presenter view, question answer, and view speaker notes. Start from the beginning. Maybe not. I know that you can do it. I just can't remember exactly how it's done. Let's go search it.
I
Record
think you should click on presenter view.
in presenter view.
I think.
So if I go to here, presenter view. Oh yeah. So here, is this actually recording? I wonder. Looks like it might be.
This is where I got confused, is right here.
Yeah. I know that there is a option for it. We just got to figure out how to work it here. Yeah, I think that if you actually give your presentation with this open, I think that it will actually record it. But let's go search it really quick. Recording slides. With voiceover. Voiceover is a so if you're using a Chromebook or using Google Chrome to access anything, you can actually use a Chrome screen recorder. You can do the same thing with Firefox. These are add-ons that you have to add onto your browser, but if you're using a browser like Firefox or Chrome, you can add those add-ons and then you can just record it directly that way. Here they say start presenting the deck in presenter view. Click on the X arrow, start a browser tab recording. So here they're doing essentially the same thing. They're using a browser tab recording using an add-on to your web browser. Other ways to do it that are actually even easier. If you actually have a screen recorder built into your computer or added onto your computer, you can use that. Most computers do have that built in. It's really easy on a Mac, for example. You just open QuickTime and do a screen recording and record anything on the screen, and it'll record anything on the microphone at the same time. So that's a really simple way to do it with a Mac. Windows computers, it depends on the computer that you're using. Every different brand has a different screen recorder or not, depending on if it has one or not. So you just go to your applications and search for screen recording or a screen capture or something, video screen capture or something like that. And it should open something, and that gives you the options to record whatever's happening on your screen, including whatever slideshow you're showing. So that works as well. And it's a good skill to learn. Because in today's world, we're definitely doing things remotely more.
I recommend using OBS.
OBS,
OBS.
okay, just a free download somewhere.
Free download.
So,
OBS, and there's a lot of resources
Good.
about it. So it's mostly used for streamers, but you can record your screen
yeah.
and make things.
Other ones I've used in the past that I've had a lot of good luck with, VLC.
DLC.
VLC is a good one. Yeah, the one with the traffic cone thing. That's a video program that will work on any platform and will do pretty much anything. Anything you want it to do, it will do. And it's even things that are, less than legal, it will do. So it's nice if you're trying to get around some kind of computer issue with video, doing anything video, VLC is nice. And I've heard of OBS. I've not used it myself, but I've heard it's similar in abilities. So
It's really good.
Yeah.
I think it's much superior to DLC.
that's good. Yeah, so there's lots of options out there, but whatever you use, the other option that you have, if you don't, for example, if you don't have PowerPoint on your computer, you can go to a school computer and download your Google Slides thing into PowerPoint and record it on a school computer. You can also download Microsoft Office for free as a student. So that's another option you have. You log into Office 365 using your student account information, and it'll allow you to download Office 365 or whatever it is. And you'll be able to use Office directly on your computer. So those options are all available to you. Okay, so going back, any other questions about that stuff from the first unit before we reiterate kind of what we talked about last time about chapter 1? Okay. In chapter 1, we are essentially learning the basic, it's a basic overview of the engineering design process. And then we're going to go chapter by chapter through the engineering process, essentially one step at a time, one step per chapter. And there are many different versions, you could say, of the engineering process. If you want to see them, the best thing to do is just to go to Google and search for the engineering design process and look under images. So we go to engineering design process. We go to images, and you can see all these different graphics that depict the engineering design process. In all of these graphics, there's kind of a overriding theme of a cycle, things that go around and around and around in a circle or some other similar thing. Some of them are more of a flow chart, but even in the flow chart versions, there are these parts that you can kind of go around in a loop, And the engineering design process is very much an iterative cyclic process. This one here is very simple and very straightforward, where you have some kind of, you start essentially at the top of this process and go around in a clockwise manner. You have a question or a problem, and you do some research, and then you imagine how you could solve that solve that problem from the research that you've done, and then you make a plan for implementing these ideas, and then you create your design, whatever it is, your solution, and then you test it, and then you improve it, right? And then this shows this process that kind of goes around in a circle, which is a fairly simplistic way of viewing the engineering design process, because this one implies that you have to get all the way through it before you can start again. It also implies that you can only go from one step to the next or to the previous one. But in reality, there are many situations where you might get to this point of testing it and you find something seriously wrong, and you have to go to reimagine something. So you skip back through the middle of the process, right? So, but this doesn't really show a pathway for that. So it's a little bit too simplistic, I think. But there are other versions of it that show a little bit more dexterity in the process. Like this one kind of has the same ideas involved, but it shows a loop on this side of the process. But that also maybe has some limitations because maybe one of the things that many people don't understand about engineering is we are often asking the wrong question. We're often solving the wrong problem. That happens all the time. And so sometimes you really do have to go back to the very beginning to figure out, sometimes you get halfway through this design process, maybe you're actually testing a design, and then you realize that you're actually not solving the problem that is really the problem. You've discovered now what the real problem is, and you have to go all the way back to the beginning, and this process doesn't allow to go all the way back to the beginning. It only allows for a cycle to happen kind of at the back end of the process. And so there are many ways to represent this weirdness and this cyclic kind of, you might call it adaptability of the process. Some of those ways include just drawing a flow chart with arrows going in all kinds of directions. But really, the best way that I've seen it is neither in this cyclic version or in the flowchart version. It's more of a hybrid of the two. And the best version I've seen is actually in this book that I use. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you that version of it. And it looks like this. And it's certainly not as colorful. In fact, in this book, there are several versions that are very similar. But this is the one that's actually tied to the different chapters in the book. And many of the figures from the book can be found on this website. This is researchgate.net. I should just download this. There we go. Now I can see the whole thing. But in this version of the process, it looks very plain and it looks very simple and not very colorful and exciting. But it breaks this down into a few more different subjects so that it can give a little more, you can have a little more specifics. And it also has arrows going pretty much everywhere. This demonstrates that you may start at the top of this process and kind of filter your way down through, but at any point in this process, you can kick out and go back or forward, or you can cycle around at any point of this process and repeat any part of this process over and over again as needed. And while we're not really using this as a map, it is important, I think, that this process is demonstrated or is presented in such a way that it's understood that the cycle can go anywhere it needs to go to fit the actual project, right? Following this process in a very orderly fashion has its uses. It can be very useful to do that, but it's not necessary. Following every step of this process can be quite useful, but it's not necessary. Doing things, out of order sometimes is very necessary and sometimes is very useful. So the other thing that this particular version of this design process does is it actually matches up different steps of this process with different chapters in the book, all the way until the very end, essentially. The last two, it doesn't really have any chapters associated with experiment and marketing, but it kind of does for chapter 10, but not too much beyond that. This one does include marketing at the end, which is an important part of the engineering process as well, because if you can't market it, you can't sell it. What was the point in doing the project in the first place? Engineers are, for the most part, businessmen. So this is the engineering design process that we will be stepping through one chapter at a time. starting with really chapter 3, which is needs and market analysis. We try to figure out what it is that what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the need that's out there? And doing a market analysis to give more detail, more depth, and more context to that need, so that we can decide what we're actually going to do as we design something to fill that need. Then it moves on to requirements. Whenever you find out what the problem is that you're actually going to solve, you need to get some more details about what it is we're doing. What do we need to actually accomplish in order to say that we've solved this problem? And that comes down to essentially just a list of requirements. What do we want this product to do in the end, right? And then we go into functions, and the functions are essentially how we're going to design things to meet those requirements. And then we go into specifications, which gives us details about how those functions, what those parts of the design, or those functional parts of the design, are, how they're going to actually fit in with each other. The specifications are going to include specifics, essentially. Each step of this process gets us more specifically close to the actual design. So each step has more details, more details, more details. After we've specified everything out, then we start to go and look at how we can actually do these things, the concept of how we're going to do this function, and how it's going to lead to the next function, and how it's going to lead to the next function. And that has to do with the conceptualization and evaluating the alternatives. So conceptualization might say, well, we need to fill a cup with hot water. There may be 5 different ways to do that. We come up with 5 different concepts for actually filling a cup with hot water. We go through and we evaluate all those concepts, all those different alternatives, and we decide which one is the best for our situation. And it may be best because it's the most efficient. It may be best because it's the cheapest. It may be best for a combination of those 2 things and a couple of other things for safety or whatever else. But those things need to be considered as we evaluate what is the best way to actually achieve the problem solving that we're going for. And then the embodiment design is next. The embodiment means that we're actually going to build a prototype. We're going to build either a simulated prototype or an actual physical prototype, and then we're going to start looking at this prototype as the final alternative, and seeing where its strengths and weaknesses are, which gets us into detailed analysis and simulation. We try to look at the thing we've designed, the thing that we've prototyped, and we're going to try to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we're going to try to fix it, alter it, whatever. That gets us into the experiment phase. And once you're done cycling through this process as many times as you need to get a product that's actually doing what you want it to do, then you market it, and then you move on, right? And this process works for brand new ideas, things that have never been done before, but it also works for the rehashing or redeveloping of something that's already been done before. Everybody, we all wear shoes. Shoes have been done before, but we're always coming up with new ways to do shoes. Different soles, different padding, different, grip on the outside, different upper, different lower, different, ways of binding it up, whatever else. We're always looking to improve products, and this process works for that just as well as for an absolutely new product. In fact, most engineers rarely get to work on a new product in their entire lifetime. Most engineers will spend their entire careers doing something that has been done over and over again, and they're just improving a newest version of it. That's what most engineering is.
So there's a design process and a redesign process.
Yes, it's definitely also a redesign process. There's no real difference.
For example, we come up with the end product. So we went through this process, let's say thousands of times. And now with our final product, we see some flaws in it. Now, in order to fix those flaws, we need to go through the same.
Yeah. So
That
that flaw becomes your new problem at the beginning of the process, right? So instead of going back to the beginning of the process and saying, we need to build a new shoe because our last shoe had a shoelace that would break, We don't say that. We say we need to build a shoelace that won't break for our new shoe. And that's our new process, right? So we just look at the shoelace for a while. But then maybe you get halfway through that fixing the shoelace problem and you realize it's not the shoelace that's the problem. You realize that it's the hole that it goes through is cutting the shoelace. And so then you go back to the beginning and you say, oh, new problem. It's not the shoelace, it's the hole the shoelace goes through. And then you fix that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's all part of the process, and the process repeats itself indefinitely.
I'm trying to adapt this to some process, even though it is more the same, but it seems like this is more oriented towards people building physical things.
Yeah.
And the embodiment part. So it flows a little bit differently when you do software development.
It does a little bit differently.
You tend to experiment while you conceptualize things.
Well, and that's even the case for physical objects as well. A lot of people do that. And that's fine. It's just a natural way of doing things. It tends to be a little bit less efficient to test your software while you're producing your software, while you're writing it. Software developers do it all the time, but it tends to be less efficient. And the reason for that is because you tend to be doing multitasking is not efficient. It just isn't. And that's multitasking. So it's better. And if you're working for a big company, you may never, ever test your own software. That actually may never happen. You may only be coding. All you do is code, somebody else tests it. And the reason for that is because of efficiency. So that happens.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very true. If you go work for Microsoft or Google or something like this, you may never. Yeah, you're given a task to write a specific piece of code. You write it, you pass it on, you're done. And somebody else tests it. And it seems weird because you think most people that write code kind of consider their code kind of like their little children, and they never want to let it go, right? But sometimes it's better to have somebody else testing it because they don't hold on to it. They don't feel like it's a piece of their being, and they're willing to tear it up if it needs to be torn up, right?
That's so weird because how do coders know if their code is going to work or not?
They don't.
They don't.
They test it.
They test it in a different file or a separate file.
But at that point, you're dealing with code that is such a big. You're dealing with just a little piece of a code that's a big piece of code, right?
Yes.
And if you're testing just this little piece, you don't really know if it's going to work with all this code anyway, right? So it's a very different world in the real world out there when it comes to. So this process is actually still very valid for anything, really. But the smaller your engineering world is, I guess. So if it's just you and your best buddy working on code somewhere, it's going to be you're going to look at this differently. You're going to leave some things out. You're going to combine some things. And that's because the world that you live in requires that. So that's totally fine. So this is designed to be so flexible. This is why they have arrows going everywhere, that you can do it however you want. And it's totally valid any way that you want to make it work. It is true that when you're writing computer code, it's a different world. It's very abstract. You're very much inside your head all the time. And so if you ask a computer engineer or a software engineer to write down their process for designing code, it will look different than this, very different, no matter who they work for or what kind of coding world they live in. But if you evaluate it very carefully, you'll see most of these elements in there. They'll just be slightly different, a little different order, or maybe they're thought of differently. It'll be very similar. Yeah. But you're right. It can look very different depending on what you're doing. Excuse me. It's interesting because one of the greatest, a lot of people consider someone like Elon Musk a great engineer. And it's true, he is a great engineer. But he's not a great engineer because of his engineering prowess technically. It's because of his understanding of this process. That's what makes him a great engineer.
Is that why he's able to be a leader?
That's one of the reasons, yeah, for sure. Elon Musk understands the big picture of making something, of solving problems. Elon Musk didn't study engineering. He didn't study computers. He studied physics. That was his mode of study. He didn't finish and get a degree in it. But if many people have asked him, what should I study if I want to be, Elon Musk? And Elon Musk, without a doubt, always says physics. He says physics is about solving difficult problems, difficult mathematical, difficult mind problems, different puzzle problems. That's what physics teaches more than any other thing. No other field of science or anything else teaches problem solving like physics does. That's what physics really is all about, is understanding something and trying to solve something that is abstract and complex and difficult using tools that are abstract and complex and difficult, right? And this is one of those things. How to design something is how to solve a problem. And so this is a very generalized view of that. And so engineering is certainly in this realm of how to solve problems. And if you want to be a good engineer, one of the best things you can learn is this type of a process, how to solve problems with this kind of a process.
And how do you, what is your advice for us to like kind of, because of course, if you have to look up the process every time you do something, that is not going to be efficient over time. So how do you internalize this process by making a lot of projects and over time internalizing it, or like going over it mentally, like?
So I would say that there are two approaches to that generally in the world, in the human world. The first approach, which is the most common approach, is memorization. And that's fine. Memorization is great. The downside to memorization is you tend to use mnemonics or some other engine for memorizing things. And then that's the way you remember it. You always remember it in terms of this is first, this is second, this is what this is what that is. It becomes very specific and very rigid. Memorization tends to be a very rigid thing. The second way of internalizing something is to understand the concept behind it. It's a conceptual understanding, right? And I think this is perfect for that kind of thing because this has a very logical step-by-step kind of idea to it. You start with a problem, you understand your problem, right? Then the concept of this entire process is to get more focused on the specifics of the problem each step of the way until you've actually created something very specific to solve that problem that was kind of vague at the beginning. You start with vague, you get more specific, more specific, more specific, until you focused it down to an actual thing that you've created that is solving that problem, right? If you think of it in terms of that, and then you use that thought process every time you go through it, you may not remember what each of these things is called, but you'll remember how this process works as you go through it, right? So, and how you do it is not as important as that you do it. But it's a lot of personality. Many people are just really good at memorizing and they find great comfort in memorizing things. And that's fine. I'm not one of those people. I'm neither good at it, nor do I find comfort when I memorize something because I just can't memorize things very well. But I really find comfort in, and I find great satisfaction in understanding the underlying, big picture of things. So that's how I approach things. And it's just a personality thing for most people. But yeah, it's not really important either way. The advantage of the conceptualization thing is that you're going to understand how to apply this process in many different aspects of life. The downside is that you won't remember, each individual thing. You'll forget something every once in a while, but in the end, you'll actually end up doing it anyway because you may not know the name of it, but you know why you needed to do it, right? So anyway, that is the design process again in a nutshell. And we now have that on recording so that everybody can watch that who wasn't able to be here. But go ahead and go to do the homework. You can explain the design process to a friend or family member, however you want, using visual aids or just talking. But make that video for homework 1. Also talk about professionalism and how you can fail. How do you know how an engineering project can fail? Well, look at this process and think of the different ways that you could possibly go wrong in this process. And you'll find a lot of ways that you can fail in a project, in an engineering project. You can also look for examples of failed engineering projects out there. We'll be talking about those coming up here pretty soon. So have a good weekend. Enjoy the nice cool weather. See you later. You know what I really want? I want an empanada.
We're only gonna be able to get started with the by 20th.
Good.
So I'm excited about that.
Excellent.